Hello there, guys. Excuse me. I'm here to do a review. Excuse me, of the Netflix television series Wednesday. I watched this show. I was really looking forward to this show. The more the trailers came out, the more and more I was looking forward to it. Now, I'm actually not a Addams Family fan. I'm not really into the Addams Family thing. But when I saw the Wednesday trailers and stuff like that, when I first heard about the show, I thought, it's probably gonna be another woke disaster. Then I started seeing some of the trailers, and I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. And the more and more trailers came out, the more and more interesting it got. So, and started getting excited for it. It actually looked like it was something really, really cool, and I really wanted to watch. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch this. And so I watch it, and I still watch with a sense of skepticism that it may not do very well. There are some things in it that I think have problems, and it does go a little bit into the woke thing at certain points. Now, I made a Facebook post back like a week ago when it first came out. About how the show was just basically woke garbage. And it turns out I may have jumped the gun a little bit, but only a little bit, because it still does have a woke stuff in it. But, what it turns out is that it seems pretty clear to me that there's a particular director for episode 3. Episode 3 is where the kind of wokeness really went crazy, and Wednesday became an insufferable little brat she's just she's smarter than everybody, even her own peers, not her peers, but her own authority figures in her life. She's just better than all of them. She's beating up boys left and right. She's fixing everybody's problems, all this stuff. She's doing all this crazy stuff, and she's lecturing everybody on colonialism and stuff like that, and that the Pilgrims were just these horrible, nasty human beings and whatever, and that's all they really were, and they were just torturing the indigenous people or just the natives. And it goes on these rants about how, I guess I'll just get episode 3 out of the way. But she starts going on these rants, and she goes after her school principal over this issue. And just goes on this rant about how, it's the typical narrative of what the natives were like before we came and ruined everything. The whole 1619 project garbage, which is just absolute historical revisionist crap. So it's the idea that the natives were just they're all in peace, and they were just getting along hunky-dory, kumbaya, blah, 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 blah. And it's just absolutely ridiculous and stupid. It's not true. That's not actually what was happening. And I'm sitting here, I'm watching this, and I'm going, if I was sitting there in front of this kid, and she starts telling me this stuff, I'm gonna be like, whoa, stop. Okay, what? What are you talking? What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. That's not true. Where are you getting this garbage from? That's just not true. I mean, I would just wish somebody would just put this kid in her place and be like, what are you talking about? I mean, where did you learn this? You talking about that 1619 crap, stuff like that's been rebuked and just debunked over and over again, that garbage. That's not true. That's not what was going on. The idea that all the native tribes were just having a blast, and living in utopia without us being here is stupid and ridiculous. Is simply not true. They were constantly at war with each other, trying to take each other's territory, take each other's women and children, and blah, 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 their livestock and everything. They were just constantly at war. And some of these tribes were much more brutal and barbaric than other ones. And so what basically happened is the ones that were weaker, when they saw the Pilgrims coming over and the Spaniards, for instance, coming over with better technology than what they had, because these are primitive people. These tribes realized, hey, maybe we can get these guys to be on our side and help us deal with these crazies over here who are killing our people, eating them and sacrificing them to gods and stuff like that. All that Aztec stuff that was going on. And so that's what they did. So it's kind of like making a deal with the Spaniards coming over. And it goes, hey guys, we'll help you guys get settled in and figure the land out. You help us deal with this issue. And so there's, they start going, okay, that sounds like a deal to me. And so they just take out the rest of these guys who are these bad guys, the real crazies. And that's it's a very simplified version of it, but that's basically what happened, what was actually going on. That's real history. That's actual history. And if you want to do serious history, unlike what they do with Wednesday, who is a character I ultimately like, I just hate what they did with her here, and I just sometimes just want to be like, like if I was working on a set, I'd want to pull Jenna Ortega to the side and be like, hey, just want you to know, I know you're playing this character who's supposed to be like, but just want you to know the history here is garbage. It's just crap. I can tell you what it's actually. I don't know. I've always had just sort of a passion for youth, even if they're celebrities. Just be like, hey, can I just pull it? I just want to tell you what it really is, because I'm just so concerned and I care about you guys. You have fragile minds when you're young, and I would like you to have a stronger constitution, as it were, in your mind about how to deal with things in a worldview perspective. But I digress on that point. So, but that's really what was more in line of what would actually happen. Again, there's more to it than that, but that's just basic stuff. The simple fact is the idea that they were all the natives were getting along and having fun together is just absolute garbage. It's just, that has never been true anywhere. Go anywhere in the world and just find in Africa or wherever, in Europe, even though they have the European Union, it doesn't mean that the nations don't have problems with each other, and that they've, history is just simply full of like these nations or these areas, these regions, full of all these groups who are all fighting each other. It's pretty much just what it is. I mean, the Chinese Communist Party today wants to try and sell the propaganda to their people that the Chinese people have always been a united people, and that also is just crap. That's just absolute garbage. That is just so far up into fantasy land. It's hilarious. There have been Chinese dynasties. There have been just all kinds of just tribal warfare constantly with the German people, with the Franks and stuff like that. It's just always been stuff like that going on. That's kind of the way it's been, and that's just the simple reality of history is not simply black and white, which is what a lot of wokeness tries to paint it as. And so, anyways, I can digress on that point. The point is that episode 3 has some important plot elements to it, but unfortunately you're gonna have to suffer through just woke anti-colonial trash. And I get the sentiment of being anti-colonial. I get that, but again, it's just not. It's simply not simple. There's more to it than just simply, oh, these barbaric Westerners came over and just conquered all the people. Not really. Not really. That's pretty simplified and just wrong. So, anyways, so that's that. But so I would just say, so I just want to say here, episode 3 is clearly the weakest episode of the entire series. It stands out substantially to where you realize that someone else directed this, and it shows, and I don't say that in a good way. I'm not saying episode 3 stands out in a good way. It stands out in a very bad way. So I've only seen that episode once, and I really don't care to watch it again, because I just don't care for that stuff. It's just, that stuff just makes my blood boil. Just sitting there listening to this, it's just ridiculous. Now in episode 1, I started getting worried because right in the very beginning when we were introduced to Wednesday, in her sort of internal monologuing, she makes a comment about stuffing scores of adolescents in underfunded schools that are run. Let's see if I can remember the line. Underfunded schools that are run by people whose dreams were crushed years ago by the people who something like that. And I heard that and I went, the natives? So what is she saying? The natives run the schools? I don't know. I didn't get that line very much. I was sitting there just thinking. I was okay, I'm gonna grant the whole like the idea that Wednesday is being incredibly perceptive here and whatever. I'm gonna grant that, even though it's not really, she's not really it really isn't. But let's just grant that. People whose dreams were crushed, these adolescent schools, these underfunded adolescent schools, um, run by people whose dreams were crushed years ago. Who? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm honestly asking. I didn't get that line. Um, but I also wanted to comment real quick here. I have to go back to the whole. She's being, again. They're presenting you a Wednesday who sees through the BS of the common life, which in this case is her adolescent world that she's growing up into, and that is public education, and stuff like that, going to school, and how in other words, she's criticizing these schools, but I would say she's criticizing them for all the wrong reasons. First of all, underfunded. Come on, please, seriously, they're not underfunded. I mean, that's just silly. Government loves funding its youth ministry. I mean, it's kind of important to creating the perfect kinds of people for your society. People who won't fight against the government, who won't question the government, just do what the government says, get the jab and all that crap. Just do what they say. You can have your little religion right off over here to the side. As long as it doesn't interfere with the state, doesn't get involved with state affairs, you're good. That's the way they raise the kids in the public education. Now, I'm saying this as somebody who was raised in the public education system. I went to public school. Thank the Lord for His grace. Kind of pulled me out of the darkness on that one. But that is kind of how it worked for me. But I would, if I were like, again, if I had a chance to talk to you this Wednesday, I'd be like, you do realize public education is kind of one of the problems with childhood adolescence and what's going on in society today, particularly with kids. There was a time when public education was utterly foreign to this country. It was put into place by socialists, Unitarian socialists who had particular views that they wanted to get across. These are people who essentially deny. I mean, they have theology behind their views, denying certain things, certain important doctrines. They're important to understanding about human nature, like that human beings are basically bad, evil. But ultimately, I'd want to say public education. Okay, it's government funded education. How do you think that's going to turn out? I mean, really think about that. We don't, because we're conditioned not to think about that. We're just conditioned to this is the status quo, because it is the status quo. It's just the norm. You just sign your kid up for school. You just send them to school. We'll take care of your kid. You get to go to work. You get to have 8 or so hours without dealing with your kid, and we'll just teach them. And you can just trust that we're going to teach them all the right stuff. And that's gone on for decades. And that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today. But I digress. This is a show. This is a review of the Wednesday show, so I apologize for that. But other than that, stuff like that, the show was actually pretty good. I thought the show was actually very, very good. The Wednesday in the show is not a Mary Sue, even though they kind of get close to making her that. They get pretty close, like uncomfortably close, where I go, oh, don't do it. Don't make her the Mary Sue. Don't do it. But then they don't. They just don't do it. Wednesday makes mistakes. She screws up. She's got faults and problems that she has to deal with. She has actual vulnerabilities that you get to see in the show, which kind of make her character very adorable, I gotta say. So she has that, but she loses sometimes. She, again, like I said, she messes up. And her messing up gets her friends in trouble, and her friends she has a lot of tense relationships with friends. And that's kind of part of her character arc, is to make friends, and that's not something Wednesday is typically known for. but she learns to make friends by the end of the show, and actually likes her friends. Now, of course, she's going to show it in her typical in the way Wednesday does, which is kind of cool. They let her have a character arc while keeping her as Wednesday, nevertheless. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like I said, I genuinely liked the way the direction they took Wednesday in the show. But there's another thing too. One of the things I was afraid of. I was afraid that she was going to be so much better than everybody else, that she's just so above the typical teen adolescent stuff that you see in shows like this. And by the way, the show it gives the vibes of kind of like being a Harry Potter-ish kind of thing. It's for kids, sort of thing like that. In other words, like a tween movie or whatever. So I don't know what they call it, but it's like the hallmark for kids. It's cheesy, corny, silly. It's supposed to be on Nickelodeon and blah 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 blah. But this show actually takes itself pretty seriously. It genuinely takes itself seriously. It has like sort of the concepts of those cheesy shows, but it takes itself fairly seriously. Now there's supposed to be humorous moments. A lot of them, honestly, I didn't find very funny. Like Jenna Ortega. Wednesday has a lot of one-liners, and unfortunately, the vast majority of them I found kind of, Like, I gotta say this. I'm sorry. I don't say this to be sexist or anything like that, but I just don't think women just aren't that funny. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. A lot of guys aren't funny either. I think sometimes I'm not all that funny, but I'm sorry, man. Just women, like, because there's Wednesday has tons of one-liners. I can't think of any of them that I even laughed at or even chuckled at or went kind of like, that was a good one. I can't think of anyone that did that too with. But then some of the guys have one-liners and they're actually funny. What's his name? Gomez, Jenna. I keep saying Jenna because she plays Wednesday. Wednesday's dad. He kind of throws a quick line out in the beginning, and I thought that was kind of funny because it was the way he said it. It was just funny. Later on, when Fester comes in and him and Thing get into a fight, that was actually kind of funny. I was kind of chuckling at that. That was about it. So I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. I just don't think women are all that funny. It's not trying to be mean or anything like that. Just kind of, it's just my observation. But I mean, like I said, I've met women who actually were pretty funny, but it's not very often. I just don't think my ladies. I just don't think women have the natural funny bone to them. It's typically the guys who make the ladies laugh, that kind of thing like that. I've tried to like watch female comedians. Just all they ever talk about is gratuitous sex. I'm just every time I click on a female comedian to watch a quick reel of a female comedian, I'm going, okay, how long until we get into these sex jokes? Oh, there it is. Like, you can just predict where they're gonna go. That's pretty much all they ever talk about. And I'm just like, I mean, look at Jim Gaffigan. That dude makes jokes of like the silliest little things, and he goes for a whole hour making the audience laugh out loud. Demetri Martin, who doesn't, at least as far as I can tell, doesn't do a whole lot of comedy, but still, his comedy was genius. It was just simple, dry humor, and it was just funny. It was ingenious. But anyways, so there you go. But let's see, I'm trying to think here. Like I said, the show, I was afraid that Wednesday was going to have this sort of like, I'm above all this stuff, and she's just going to have this complete stoic nature the entire time. That's what I was really afraid of. But that doesn't happen. That actually doesn't happen. Even though she puts on that face, obviously, because that's Wednesday, the reality is what you see in the show, other than episode 3, but what you see in the show are moments where she genuinely becomes emotional. They do that cool thing where a character says something about themselves, or that they're this or they believe this, and then when the rubber meets the road, they're actually not exactly like that. That there's a little bit more nuance to them. Well, that's kind of what happens with this Wednesday, and I really like the way they did it. She tries to portray herself as this sort of stoic, doesn't care about anything, kind of nature or character, but then they show that she actually does. She really does care about people. She cares about her friends. There's a moment later in the show, I'm not going to spoil this, where someone that is really close to Wednesday, that she really cares for, gets seriously injured to where they almost die. It actually happens twice, but there's one particular one I'm thinking of in episode 7, where someone that she really cares about gets badly injured and almost dies, and you just see, oh my gosh, Jenna Ortega does an incredible job, because you see Wednesday, her eyes begin to water up, her voice becomes shaky, and her lip begins to curl, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like, oh my, I feel like my heart's just, oh, poor Wednesday, poor Wednesday, you know, and but like, anyways, so Jenna Ortega does it in a way that, because again, the director could just look at you and say, okay, in this scene you got to be basically crying, but you're trying to stop, you're trying not to cry, but like as it gets worse and worse and worse, the reality begins to sink in. It becomes more and more clear that you just can't keep it together. Like he just do that, and many pretty good actors do that. But Jenna Ortega does it in a way that is like unique to Wednesday. Like she stays in character. It's not just you got to cry, but she does the crying thing in a Wednesday kind of way. So like, and I thought that was really well done. Like she just nails it. And so compare that moment of Wednesday to the Rings of Power, Galadriel in the very beginning when her brother dies. When you compare the two of these things, it's very obvious which character you're going to sympathize with more. The Rings of Power one was just an absolute joke. You can't seriously expect me, and I did this in my review of the Rings of Power, but you can't seriously expect me, like you show me this chick who's got a stoic face the entire time. She's got a tear coming down her eye, but nothing else. That's it. She still has the stoic appearance. You really think I'm going to be empathetic towards this character? No. I'm like, she's not really crying. I bet she can't even, like that actress can't even actually cry. They probably just put a drop in her eye and just let it come down, because there's no like swelling in the eyes that you see with a lot of people who cry and stuff like that. Now, in Jenna Ortega's Wednesday, you don't see a whole lot of either, and I think they did that because she's just pale face constantly. But still, she does a phenomenal job. And you really feel horrible for her. You really feel like, oh my gosh, this poor girl and what's happening to her here. It's terrible. But so I'm looking at that and go, that's how you do it. See, it's not that I just hate female leads. I'm just like, do a good one. And they actually do a good job with this Wednesday, because she makes mistakes. She has vulnerabilities. She tries to hide her vulnerabilities in her creepiness. But in reality, what they show you in the show is, at the end of the day, this creepy girl is still a girl, still human. And oh my goodness, that's the key. That is the key to making compelling, interesting characters. They have to be human. No matter how inhuman they may even appear, they have to still be human. We don't identify with things that are not human. That's why when they make movies or shows with predominantly animals, they humanize the animals, because that's what we connect with, the image of God. But so you have to do that. If you don't do that, you're going to lose the audience. You're going to have a few people who are just dense, who like it, and that's it. People who want to give the virtue signaling woke crowd points. Who cares about them? But the people who actually care about good stories, like myself, you've got to really tell a great story, and part of that is making a character that I'm going to empathize with, that I'm going to care about, that I want to see succeed. And they do a really good job of that with Wednesday. So there's one more thing here quick with Wednesday. Like I said, the idea that I was afraid that she was going to be like so above and better than everybody here. She's going to show everybody up. And that's what she tries to do. She tries to portray that, but she actually ends up kind of caring about what's going on around her in terms of the kids around her and stuff like that, her friends. And there's a boy that she starts to like, but she doesn't want to admit it. And they have this really great moment. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but they have this really great moment where she has a couple guys that the show kind of hints that she might be interested in, but we don't really know. But there's this one particular guy in the show, and he's unique because he's the only one who really learns to understand Wednesday, and because he does, that wins her affection ultimately. So he takes her on a date later on in the show. I won't tell you how he does it, but he takes her on a date, and it's like you and I would be looking at it going, "What the heck is going on here? This is romantic." But again, this is Wednesday, and so he understands that and goes, "You can't just take her to a normal place, with a nice restaurant or something like that. This is Wednesday we're talking about here." And so he actually impresses her. And so after their little date, they just have this great moment where he's gonna start moving in for like he says, "Look, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I really want to be more than friends with you. I really like you, Wednesday." And he's like, "I think you like me too," kind of thing. And what Wednesday does, and it's just great to her character. What she does is she kind of tries to push him away by, discouraging him from even thinking about pursuing a relationship with her. She goes, "I'm not exactly friend material, let alone more than that." And she starts saying, I'm gonna break your heart. I'm gonna be selfish, and I'm gonna do all kinds of things. She's doing everything she can to dissuade him and discourage him. But again, he has her figured out. So he basically goes, "I know what you're doing, and it's not gonna work on me, Wednesday. I know what you're doing, because I know you." And he's basically saying, "I know in reality you're doing this because you like me too, and you're afraid to admit it." So he kind of gets closer to her, and he's about to go in for a kiss. And she starts telling him about how she almost got him killed. She's trying to dissuade him, but in reality, what does she really want? He's making her very uncomfortable, but there's a part of her that likes it, that really wants this to mean something. And you can tell because when he kind of moves in for the kiss, she doesn't back away. She just stands there. So that tells you she actually kind of wants to. She wants to kiss him. But then as he's getting ready to move in for the kiss, she goes, "You're making a mistake." I've probably spoiled a lot of it already, but and it's just such a great moment. It kind of goes against most of the norms of a typical, teenage love story kind of thing like that. But he just kind of goes, "I'm probably, yeah, you're probably right," but he's like, "I don't really care." And but they kiss later on in the show, or in the episode actually. But when they do, it's such a warming moment, and you just see Wednesday. She kind of acts all awkward about it because she doesn't really know what to think about it. But again, I love this because you see the human side of this girl, even though she's always been portrayed as this devilish, fiendish, little innocent-looking child. She's still human, and she still has human emotions. She still has human feelings. She still has. Again, she's a teenager, so now she's got those feelings that she probably didn't have when she was a kid, a little kid. Now she's got those feelings for boys and stuff like that. And you see her really actually embrace this idea of pursuing a relationship with this guy. And so I thought it was really cool. I thought it was cute. I thought it was adorable. And it just worked really well. And so, there you go. In terms of the plot, I'll just say this about the plot itself real quick. It was a pretty good plot. I mean, it wasn't super unique or original, it wasn't, it's kind of like a horror mystery murder thing. But it was all right. I kind of had it figured out by episode 7. I kind of figured out what was going on, and I could tell what they were trying to do. They tried to lead you down, a particular trail, and I already had it all pretty much figured out. by the end of episode 7. Not to brag, but I did. But it had a pretty good ending, a nice ending, and again, at the end, the arc that Wednesday goes through, I thought was really good, really well done, and very enjoyable. So I would absolutely recommend this show. I would definitely recommend the show. It is a good show. I've watched it a couple times, other than episode 3. I just pretty much skip episode 3 now. If you can get through that, it's a good show. It really is a good show. What I want to do next, though, because I do have some problems with the plot, despite it being a good show. There's some plot issues that I want to talk about, but I can only talk about them in spoilers. I have to spoil stuff. So I'm going to make another video where I'm going to be talking about the plot itself and my problems with the plot. Excuse me. Even though they're problematic, they're not like huge problems. It's still overall a good plot, but there's some issues that I wanted to discuss in terms of the story. But that's going to involve me, like I said, spoiling some things. So that in that one, there'll be a spoiler alert and stuff like that. You don't have to watch that if you don't want to. Or you can go watch the show and then watch that later on. And it's up to you, whatever. Or you can just spoil it, but you've been warned. So with that, I'm going to close this out. If I were to rate the show, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. So, all right, guys, I will talk to you later. God bless.